Let's start this video off with a question. When you hear the word Vista, what comes first to your mind? The Windows Aero graphical user interface? User account control? Windows Search? BitLocker? Or the new improved .NET framework? Most likely you haven't considered any of this. Instead, you probably thought of the negative reception that this operating system received in the public and the press. Why is that? Why do we first think of the negative reception instead of the positive one when it comes to Vista, but not for, let's say, XP or even Windows 7? To determine that and all of the questions you probably have, we first have to go back to the year of 2001. This was the final year of the development of Windows Whistler, an operating system that was unveiled that year in February as Windows XP. As we all know, Windows XP received critical acclaim upon its release in October 2001. The user interface, performance, and hardware support were all great, except the search engine that it used. 2001 was, however, also the year when a new project by Microsoft was born. It was Windows Blackcomb. Microsoft chose these two codenames because Whistler and Blackcomb are the names of a resort municipality and a mountain in British Columbia, Canada, respectively. Microsoft intended that this operating system be the next major release of Windows after XP, and they sought to incorporate three new major technologies in this new operating system, which included a user interface framework for Windows-based desktop applications, initially internally known as Avalon and later released as Windows Presentation Foundation, a new open-source runtime for APIs in the .NET framework, initially known as Indigo and later released as Windows Communication Foundation, and a new data storage and management system based on relational databases, known as WinFS, which is short for Windows Future Storage. These three new technologies ultimately became known as the pillars of this new operating system. Arguably, the most prominent technology out of these three was WinFS, the technology Microsoft worked on the most. This storage and management system aimed to merge the traditional file system with a relational database, allowing users and applications to store, search, and organize data in a far more powerful and flexible ways. Traditional file systems like NTFS organize files in folders, a rigid hierarchy based on names and paths. WinFS proposed something radically different: content-based storage. Instead of relying solely on folder structures, files will be stored as objects with metadata. For example, a photo wouldn't just be a JPEG file in a folder, it would be a photo object with searchable attributes like who's in the picture, when it was taken, and where. This technology was built on Microsoft's SQL Server. That meant that your desktop could support powerful queries, relationships between different data types, and automatic data classification. From a developer's perspective, WinFS promised a huge leap forward. Back to development of Windows Vista. At some point during late 2001 and early 2002, Blackcomb's size increased greatly, with new additions such as the Windows sidebar. Microsoft then decided to split this project into two operating systems: Longhorn, which would come after XP, and Blackcomb, which would come after Longhorn. During late 2002, the first build of Windows Longhorn was leaked to the public. Its looks were very similar, if not the same, to Windows XP, besides several minor changes to the graphical user interface, which was now known as Plex, with later design styles being known as Slate and Jade. In these builds, elements of WinFS were also present, but very little of it could have actually been seen. Microsoft initially intended to release this operating system somewhere during 2003 or 2004, though its development slowly became more ballooned in scope. Each of the technologies that constituted the pillars of Longhorn added complexity and progress slowed, especially because of WinFS. Security concerns during this period also made Microsoft shift towards Windows XP again. releasing Series Pack 2 in August 2004. At this point, Longhorn became unstable and unsustainable. Microsoft made a drastic decision in 2004 to scrap the project and start over again. Was this decision controversial? Well, most likely not. Workers were burned out, and the main pillars of Longhorn still remained inoperative. Jim Elchin, the co-president of Microsoft, said of Longhorn, "It was so complex, its writers would never be able to make it run properly." After the reset, Microsoft continued working on Longhorn, this time basing the operating system off Windows Server 2003 Series Pack 1. Microsoft also scrapped WinFS, a technology too ambitious and complex for its time. However, Microsoft continued to work on Windows Presentation Foundation, Windows Communication Foundation, and Windows Sidebar, while they also introduced new features such as a new graphical user interface, known as Windows Aero, the user account control system, and BitLocker. Beta testing began a year later in 2005, the same year when Microsoft chose the official name of this operating system, Vista. The first preliminary developer preview build was released in April 2005 for attendees of the WinHEC conference to show the progress that has been made since the reset. The first beta lasted until May 2006, when the second beta was unveiled after Bill Gates' keynote presentation at the WinHEC 2006 conference. The second beta was initially available only to Microsoft Developer Network subscribers, but was extended to all users in June. Development of this operating system ended in November 2006 when it was finally finalized. And in January 2007, Vista was officially released to the public. Well, what this operating system have to offer? Let's start with Windows Aero, the graphical user interface of this operating system. Microsoft intended the new interface to be more aesthetically pleasing than those of previous Windows versions. It features transparent glass-like window borders, smooth animations and transitions, live taskbar thumbnails, and Flip 3D, a 3D window switching feature. Compared to XP's interface, Aero felt fresh, professional and futuristic, which definitely helped position Vista as a next-generation operating system. Aero also made Vista more intuitive. Features like live previews of open windows and animated transitions helped users better understand what was happening on screen. One reviewer said that Vista's Aero interface takes advantage of modern 3D graphics accelerators to provide features such as translucent glass window frames, supple animations, scalable icons, and live previews of documents and windows, and that they found Aero effects supple and compelling. Next on the list, Windows Search. This new content index desktop search platform replaced the indexing service that was present in previous versions of Windows. This new search platform was built into the Start menu, Windows Explorer, Control Panel, and other parts of the operating system. As users typed, search results would appear instantly, pulling up files, apps, emails, settings, and more, a huge leap from the slow, clunky search in Windows XP. Vista also used the new always running indexing service that scanned and cataloged the contents of files, not just file names. This meant that users could search for a document by keywords inside a file or metadata like author or date. Let's not forget the Windows Media Center. This was a multimedia application designed to turn your PC into a full-fledged home entertainment system. It featured a clean, polished interface with Aero-inspired visuals and allowed users to watch and record live television, view photos, play music, and access digital videos. While it was a continuation of the Media Center introduced in Windows XP, Vista brought some significant upgrades. New games such as Chess Titans and Purple Place were introduced, while apps such as the Magnifier were updated to use the Windows Presentation Foundation interface framework to render the content, making images sharp and not pixelated. DirectX 10 was also a major overhaul of Microsoft Graphics API, and it marked a significant leap forward in visual fidelity and performance potential for PC gaming. Arguably one of the most important features of Vista is actually user account control. Its goal was to enhance system security by limiting application privileges and preventing unauthorized changes to the operating system. It was designed to reduce the risk of malware and accidental system changes by prompting the user for permission before allowing any program to make significant modifications, like installing software, changing system settings, or accessing protected files. Everything that I've said so far probably sounds good to you. These additions were indeed great, and that is why some people actually like this operating system. Why is this operating system hated then? Was it really that bad? Well, where should we start? Maybe from the beginning. The extremely long development cycle of almost 6 years, which prompted several delays of releasing the operating system, came under criticism. For example, its predecessor, Windows XP, was only developed for 2 years, and operating systems even before XP were developed for up to a few years. Now, the probably most common reason why people actually hated Vista is because of its hardware requirements and drivers issues. Many modern computers that ran Windows XP were simply not powerful enough to run Vista. You simply needed more RAM and processing power. While Aero's design and looks were appreciated, it was actually extremely resource intensive, requiring more powerful graphics hardware to run smoothly. On older PCs, it would commonly cause lag and slowdowns. Vista also had incomplete driver support. Printers, scanners, graphic cards, and even sound cards did not work properly, and many third-party applications were compatible or unstable on Vista due to its new security model. That brings us to user account control. While a great addition, it was just too annoying and intrusive. You would often be interrupted by elevation prompts, even for minor tasks. There was also confusion in costs of this operating system, considering that Microsoft released 6 editions of Vista: Starter, Home Basic, Home Premium, Business, Enterprise, and Ultimate. Ultimate was the most expensive edition, which included all features of the Home Premium and Business editions, as well as BitLocker and multilingual user interface. These issues prompted many Vista users to switch back to XP, which ended up continuing dominating the market scene even after Vista's release. Because of these issues, PC World ended up rating Vista as the biggest tech disappointment of 2007, saying that despite its hefty hardware requirements, Vista is slower than XP. InfoWorld also rated Vista as the number 2 of tech's all 25 flops, saying that by the time Windows Vista actually shipped, the revolution looked more like a failed coup. While Vista received negative reception from the public and the press, there was also significant negative campaign against Windows in general at the time. Microsoft's biggest rival Apple launched a campaign called Get Mac in 2006. The goal of this campaign was to highlight the advantages of using a Mac over a Windows PC in a simple and humorous way. The ads personified a Mac as young, cool, and user-friendly, and the PC as uptight, outdated, and prone to problems like viruses and crashes. Through this contrast, Apple aimed to position the Mac as more modern, reliable, and easy to use. In several of its advertisements, Apple also directly attacked Vista after its release. They showcased Vista's user account control annoyances and driver and performance issues. A year after Vista's release, Microsoft decided to launch Windows Mojave, a new operating system that was only showcased to a small audience during a public case study. The study began by asking the participants' thoughts of Vista and were then asked to rate the operating system from 0 to 10. Next, the participants were shown Mojave and were guided to test it out. After the test, participants were then asked to rate Mojave from 0 to 10. At the end of the study, Microsoft revealed that what they actually reviewed was not a new operating system, but actually Vista itself. While Microsoft tried to improve the image of Vista with this advertising campaign, they didn't really quite succeed. Despite Microsoft releasing 2 series packs for Vista after its release, which addressed some issues that were noticed upon its release, XP continued dominating the operating system market. Was Vista a total failure? Well, no. It was a necessary step forward. Vista introduced crucial technologies like user account control, the Windows Display Driver model, DirectX 10, Windows Aero, and a revamped search system, all of which laid the groundwork for future versions of Windows. It forced a shift toward better security, modern visuals, and a more stable architecture, even if it meant enduring growing pains. So, was Windows Vista a bad operating system? Yes, in terms of execution, but was it important? Absolutely. You could say that it walked so that Windows 7 could run. In many ways, Vista was ahead of its time, introducing features the hardware and ecosystem weren't ready for. It stumbled at launch, but its DNA lives on in every version of Windows that came after.